In our religion and human development class, I want to talk about Bowlby's attachment theory in religion and human development, religion and psychology for that matter. Bowlby argues that behaviors learned in early life and continued in later developmental stages may be due to the type and nature of caregiving attachment. Proposing infants develop internal working models of attachment relationships that form the basis of expectation in close relationships. A disorganized attachment style will form a disorganized internal working model, making it difficult to form a coherent model of child's relationship with their caregiver that makes sense and provides a feeling of security. Now, children with disorganized styles in infancy tend to be rated by teachers in early primary school as aggressive, impulsive, and even disruptive, according to Barton 2009. On the whole, John Bowlby, who lived between 1907 to 1990, was a psychoanalyst like Sigmund Freud, and believed that mental health and behavioral problems could be attributed to early childhood. Bowlby's evolutionary theory of attachment suggests that children come into the world biologically pre-programmed to form attachments with others because this will help them to survive. Bowlby was very much influenced by ideological theory in general, but especially by one, Lawrence, who wrote in 1935, and in a study he dealt on what he called the study of imprinting. In other words, what are the imprints or carryovers, or what are those marks, the imprints that you get from your caregiver. Lawrence further showed that attachment was innate in young ducklings. Attachment was innate in young ducklings and therefore has a survival value. Bowlby believed that attachment behaviors are instinctive and will be activated by any conditions that seem to threaten the achievement of proximity, such as separation, insecurity, and fear. Bowlby, in his 1969 and 1988 works, also postulated that the fear of strangers represents an important survival mechanism built in by nature. To him, babies are born with the tendency to display certain innate behaviors called social releasers, which help ensure proximity and contact with the mother or attachment figure. For example, crying, smiling, crawling, and so on and so forth. These are species species-specific behaviors. And during the evolution of the human species, it would have been the babies who stayed close to their mothers that would have survived to have children of their own. And Bowlby now hypothesized that both infants and mothers have evolved a biological need to stay in contact with each other. Now, these attachment behaviors initially function like fixed action or fixed action patterns and all share the same function. The infant produces innate social releases behaviors such as crying and smiling that stimulate caregiving from adults. In other words, these innate social releases behaviors are meant to call for attention, to invite the caregivers to come in or chip in and attend to the needs of an infant. The determinant of attachment is not food, but care and responsiveness. Bowlby further suggested that a child would initially form only one attachment, and that the attachment figure acted as a secure base for exploring the world. The attachment relationship acts as a prototype for all future social relationships, so disrupting it can have severe consequences. Now, at this stage, and coming in a context where people, as Professor John S. Beatty once noted, coming from a society which is notoriously religious, we may want to ask a question. And the question is, the question we want to ask is, as a religious person, to what extent can you agree with Bowlby's theory of attachment? As a religious person, to what extent can you agree with Bowlby's theory of attachment? Let me say that attachment theory is focused on the relationships and bonds between people, particularly long-term relationships, including those between a parent and a child, and between even romantic partners. Now, a British psychologist, John Bowlby, was the first attachment theorist, describing attachment as a lasting psychological connectedness between human beings. In other words, we are attached to one another in one way or the other, particularly the infancy. Bowlby was interested in understanding the separation, anxiety, and distress that children experience when separated from their primary caregivers. And some of the earliest behavioral theorists or behavioral theories suggested that attachment was simply a learned behavior, and these theories proposed that attachment was merely the result of feeding relationship between the child and the caregiver. Because the caregiver feeds the child and provides nourishment, the child becomes attached as these theories suggested. Now, what John Bowlby, the British psychologist, observed is that even feedings did not diminish the anxiety experienced by children when they were separated from their primary caregivers. Instead, he found that attachment was characterized by clear behavioral and motivation patterns. When children are frightened, they will seek proximity from their primary caregivers in order to receive both comfort and care. A pat on the back is a power unto itself. Well done, do it better, wake up, go on. That is care. And so, children are frightened. When they are always frightened, the person who becomes the comforter is the one who is cross. And that person is the so-called primary caregiver. Whenever the child falls down, the primary caregiver becomes and is always critical person. So this is necessary even